Faster than writing to a letter forum. More thoughtful than angry clickbait. Able to discuss the world's first superhero in comics, film, TV, and more. It's the Supermaniacs, and I am very excited to be talking more Superman today with Michael here. We got a lot to go over, but very exciting times. Absolute Superman #1 hit the stores earlier this month, and I'm really looking forward to talking about that. And we also have some more of our Superman fandom questions that we're going to run through. We're going to cover our favorite all-time depictions of Superman, how we feel about Superman and Batman. Should they be friends? Should they be antagonists? What's going on there? We'll talk about the philosophical question of whether Clark is the real person or is Superman the real person. What's going on there with the multiple personas? And also cover some of the things we're looking forward to in Superman media coming out later this year and in 2025. So I'm happy to get started delving into this. Mike, how the hell are you doing?
I'm doing great. I've been keeping up with Superman and Lois as best as I can. I haven't seen the past one, but I've heard some amazing things.
I'm caught up to the episode that aired last week. We're recording this on a Monday night, and there's like an episode that comes out tonight that obviously I haven't seen, but everything up until that. I think the first 7 episodes of season 4.
It's crazy how quick it's almost done.
Yeah, it's been a hell of a ride. I've been really digging that season, but that's definitely something that in December, when the final episode is out, I think that's going to be a lot of fun for us to talk about. Just that entire, not just the final season, but that entire 4-year show. We said previously that I think we both consider it the best CW show by far.
Oh, absolutely. And the stuff I've seen, it's keeping that record so far. And I know it's only 4 seasons, but so many of these other shows failed in the 4th season so fast.
Yeah, to be fair, a lot of them were able to stay good up until around season 4, and then it starts going downhill.
Yeah, it varied. I know Arrow was season 4 was real bad, but 5 went back up. Flash, I stopped at season 4, and then some of the other ones, they were just iffy, because that's the thing, is that it was a budgetary thing for a lot of them. Others just because they kept trying to do the same villains over and over again, which is why I've appreciated that Superman and Lois has not fallen into that pit. Yeah,
and I always say Smallville. It was a 10-season show that peaked in season 3, but it was the granddaddy of the CW DC shows. So,
yes,
and it's cool to have that era of DC entertainment bookended with Superman.
I've been so happy about that still. I know we talked about a little bit about that last time, but it just makes me happy that Superman is the beginning and he's the end, and it's very poetic.
Well,
it rhymes.
Yeah, like the George Lucas thing. Yeah, it's like stanzas in a poem; they rhyme. But we do have some pre-recorded content that we're going to roll later. Just some of the Q&A session that we did, where we were just going through some questions about our fandom for Superman. So when we get to that, we'll be covering some big stuff, like our favorite depictions of Superman outside of the comics. And we had some audio issues when we were talking about our least favorite takes on Superman. So we can actually do that live at the end of the show. If people want to hear us rant and rave and bitch and moan, I don't think we'll get too whiny fanboyish, but
we'll try not to.
I always appreciate people who come to the internet to talk about the things they like instead of the things they don't like. Yeah,
no, of course, and I even have things that I like about the things I don't like.
True, yeah, I do too. But if people do want to hear us complain about something, we'll talk about our least favorite depictions of Superman at the end of the show live. But starting things off before we roll our pre-recorded content, let's talk about the latest reboot of Superman in the comics.
Yes.
That being Absolute Superman.
I'm so happy I have a copy. I meant to get a physical one, but I had been so busy that by the time I would get to one, I'm sure they're gone.
Well, at this point. I read most of my DC comics on the DC Infinite app. So I didn't want to wait for this one, though. I was like, nope, I'm I'm going to drive to the store and pay physical money for a physical book.
I got it on Amazon using my Amazon like digital thing, reward stuff or whatever. But I did order a physical one because what I want to do is I want to frame it with Ultimate Spider-Man #1 next to each other.
Oh, that is so fitting because yeah, this is what DC has kind of. I don't know if DC like marketing has said it. Oh, it's like Marvel's Ultimate, but for our guys. But I mean, that's pretty much what they're doing.
Oh
And they
yeah, the
tried this
writers have pretty
before.
much been saying it. Oh no, of course they've tried it before, but they I feel like they didn't try hard enough last time. If that makes sense.
The Earth One stuff was interesting. You know, they did that Earth One Superman that Joe Michael Straczynski wrote.
Yeah, I have them all too. There's I think there's 3 of them all together, and the artist changed on the last one, but they were so like all of them were few and far. Like the gaps between them was so large, and they were like, "We're gonna do a Justice League of this," and they never did. Like they
Right.
made the last one they did was like Green Lantern or something, and nobody read that one as far as I know.
I heard it was good, but yeah, I didn't read it.
No, yeah, I didn't read it. I tried to. I started it. And I'm like, this is really like it was too out there. I guess is a good way of putting it. When I started it, and I was just like, oh, I'll read this when I'm in the mood for it. And I just never did. And then the Batman ones varied for some. Wonder Woman people really liked outside of a few things.
I loved
And
the Grant Morrison Wonder Woman ones.
yeah, and it was great. I know they made some changes that some people were kind of iffy on, but I think it worked really well. And then the same with, I thought the Superman one worked really well, but it also came out at the same time as New 52 did.
Right, it seemed kind of redundant because we were also rebooting Superman in the main universe. I remember being so surprised by that because I was like, "Oh, I guess we're doing yet another Superman origin story." This is back in like 2011 when the Earth One Volume One came out,
Yeah.
and but then the New 52 happened. I was like, "Wow, we're gonna do it again." It was like the same year, so
And it was so weird because the New 52 was so like, and no Trunks, where the Earth One was like Trunks all the time. Like I don't know what it was just weird. Like it was hard to explain what was going. Like it's hard to explain to somebody who wasn't there how weird that was to be in the middle of like this reboot as well as like a new version at the same time, being told there's going to be a lot more versions of this Earth one. It's like, yeah, but why should we care now if it doesn't, like if New 52 is just doing that? But again, I feel like both of those were bad attempts at doing what this is doing now, what Absolute Superman's doing now.
yeah, and I guess just to elaborate on that, this is a new universe that is going to be. I think there is going to be like much more connective tissue between this title and then the other ones that are out now is Absolute Batman and Absolute Wonder Woman.
Yes.
I have not read the Wonder Woman one yet because it's not on DC Infinite yet. But I read the Batman one the same day that I read this one. So I read Batman first, and then I read Superman, and they both have a lot in common, yet they're entirely unique flavors, but like kind of like the same themes in both. It made me really excited to see. Eventually, I want to see like these two dudes like in the same room together. You know?
Yeah, that's the thing about, because I did read the Wonder Woman one. I haven't read Absolute Batman #2 yet because I know that came out before we recorded this. But I've seen like bits and pieces online. But Absolute Wonder Woman, yeah, it's another one. It's another good example of like, because for people who don't know what's going on with the Absolute Universe, the Absolute Universe is that Darkseid figured out how to essentially be reborn in his own universe, and by that I mean like he has made this universe in his image. So hope is like evil is the dominant force of the world. So hope is like the underdog, which is why everybody is so different. But it's also the reason why it works so much, because it's not just like, oh, this isn't just Superman or Batman. It's not just Batman walked down an alley, his parents got shot. It's not just Wonder Woman. It's like, I had to leave Themyscira. It's not just Clark showing up and being like, and then he was raised on a farm. Like, it's none of that. Like, this is why this works better, in my opinion, because it's willing to wipe the slate harder than what Earth One did, and it's willing to wipe the slate at all because the New 52 failed because it wanted to have its cake and eat it too when it came to its continuity. Because Batman, New 52 Batman's like, I went through 6 Robins in 5 years. It's like, no, how would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. And so that's why, to me, New 52 failed, because they tried too hard to keep things without really wiping the slate clean. And Earth One failed just purely because they weren't doing it correctly. They just were taking too long in between. Whereas Absolute has been a banger each issue so far.
So to talk a little bit about Absolute Superman, it's by Jason Aaron and Rafa Sandoval. I'm not sure
Yeah.
the artist's name. I'm not really familiar with their work. I don't know if I've read anything else by them, but I like Aaron. I really liked his Thor run that he did at Marvel.
Yeah, and he did a
Uh,
great Superman run or Superman story recently.
right. Which I haven't read yet, but that was in the ongoing Superman that Joshua Williamson is doing. Didn't Williamson like take a break from that or something, and
No,
Aaron took over a few issues,
it was
or
right
was it an
after
action?
Philip Kennedy Johnson's Action Comics.
Okay, that's where
Like
it was.
he's the in between him and Joshua Williamson.
Okay,
Because and I was hoping it would be a full run, but it was a 3-issue Bizarro story that I really liked. But Rafa Sandoval, he's done some Superman stuff fairly recently, actually. He did a lot of stuff for Marvel for Dark Avengers. He also did some really great Flash work. I was a big fan of his stuff on the Flash. What he did that. But no, his art on this is gorgeous, and like he makes this outfit work really well. He makes the whole world work really well, actually.
yeah. So we get a new look for Superman. And on the covers, he has his cape, but in like this first issue, he's all capeless the whole time, right?
Yeah, there's I know Jason Aaron let one thing slip when it comes to his cape. That's very strange, but one, I don't want to spoil it, and two, I don't really know how accurate it was that he said, if that makes sense. Because if you
Well,
look at the cover, you'll notice the way the cape's edges aren't like just an edge. Like it looks more like a substance, I guess is the way of putting it.
yeah, like more of like an energy or a liquid, and not like solid fabric.
Yeah, like I guess I'll just say it real quick. But again, I don't know how accurate it is because it's something that he hinted at. Is the idea that the cape might be made out of pieces of Krypton?
Yeah, like the burnt ashes of Krypton, I think is how Aaron phrased it.
Yeah, and I can't wait to find out how that happens. And the suit is very different too. It's closer to the New 52 suit when it comes to certain things, but it's also weirdly reminiscent of the way Iron Man's suit works.
Right, because the suit is kind of a living entity. It has like Kryptonian AI that talks to him, like Jarvis in the Iron Man movies.
Yeah, and like there's so much I want to talk about when it comes to this thing. The main thing is that I love the way, because this is a very prominent thing through all three, is that the worlds are so dark now, and I don't mean like the way, like edgy edge lord dark. It's just like, no, this is just the world. The world isn't fair, not just both on Earth but on Krypton. And I was a big fan of the fact that it took the arrogance of science people or scientists and all those. I don't know why they said science people. Of the scientists on Krypton and made them like that much higher than they were even before. Like they were just like banning people for like the smallest things. I thought that was really, it really sells the underdogness of those characters.
Yeah, an underdog is a good term to use, and that's very much something that Scott Snyder was doing in the Absolute Batman uh, series, take Bruce Wayne and make him more of an underdog than he's ever been before, take away his wealth and all of his advantages, and it's interesting to see that approach done with Superman. I often agree with the common opinion that Superman is the hero he is because of the Kents, because of the people who raised him, with Jonathan and Martha on the farm. And we're not really sure what their involvement with him is going to be in this story. We mainly see Krypton, and Clark seems to live on Krypton longer. He doesn't come to Earth as a baby. It looks like he actually has like a bit of a childhood on
Yeah, he's like
Krypton.
maybe 10 or something when they finally show him.
But in place of that, they give him that same kind of salt of the earth background. His parents, Jor-El and Laura, they're farmers. They're like a hardworking labor class that's depicted as being the underdogs and being exploited by the ruling science class, who is also exploiting the planet Krypton and It looks like that is what leads to its destruction. So it has a lot to say on our real world about how capitalism is fueling climate change and also oppressing the working class. We see that juxtaposed with his experience on Earth. We cut back and forth between kind of the prequel stuff on Krypton and then him on modern day Earth, being that very 1938 Action Comics #1, that champion of the oppressed and downtrodden. When uh, he's fighting on the side of some mine workers in Brazil that are being forced to mine diamonds through like asbestos and really bad conditions, and the use of Peacemaker was
Oh
interesting.
yeah, it's an army of peacemakers.
Yeah, that a corporation, they're like a private army that a corporation is using to like police their workers. So,
Well, I love
uh,
that. Like, if you look at one of the panels with all the peacemakers and all the workers, there's just a sign that says "World Saving in Progress" because it's just them like it's clear that this world is they're yeah, like you said, they're exploiting everybody, but they're trying to put some kind of nice bow on it to be like, we're helping you, the people, in that kind of way. And until they do something they don't like, and then they pull a gun on them, kind of thing. And yeah, like you said, it hammers the champion of the downtrodden from not even, because that's the other difference, is that Jor-El and them are normally like, I am the great scientist that everybody listened to until I said the Krypton's going to explode. Or in this world, he's like, nobody wants to listen to me, all because I said like one little thing, like one time. The same with his mom's backstory was heartbreaking, absolutely
right,
heartbreaking.
right. Like his mom got like she wanted to be an astronaut and she got like rejected from school because she thought that Krypton didn't fund the space sciences enough.
Yeah, and she was like 9, which is
Like
why it's so ridiculous.
people can't speak out. It's this is Kryptonian cancel culture, I guess. They were
Yeah,
canceled.
and then it just shows, and I also love the fact that it showed that Clark is not, or not Clark, because I guess he's not Clark. We don't know if he ever even gets
Yeah,
that
he
name.
might never become Clark in this universe, which is sad.
Like, his name is just Cal, I guess, at this point. And I love the fact that the suit basically says, "Hey, you're not full powered at all times." Like when they finally cut to him, he's like, "Oh yeah, you're charging because of what you did last night, doing all those diamond things." Like, there's so many cool things going on in it that are just like fascinating to me. And then the reveal at the end of what Lois is up to as well, and still making her be the one to give him his name, I thought was a great touch.
Yeah, the use of Lois in the comic is extremely interesting because the whole time I was reading this, and you might have been thinking the same thing, Mike, because I know you're a big Clark and Lois guy, but the whole time I was thinking this, like, when is he going to meet Lois? When is he going to meet Lois? And then the way that they handle that, I was like, okay, that's a nice surprise, but they still have her give him the name Superman.
It was such a great surprise because I was expecting it to be like issues later. Like, I thought it was just gonna build up to like maybe them meeting eventually, and then just does it. And I was like, oh, okay, you got me, you got me. I can't wait to see what happens after this.
The two characters I'm always dying to see Superman meet whenever I get like a retelling or like an origin story or something is Lois and Lex. And I don't know, they kind of hint at Brainiac, but I've seen some people speculate that this could be like an interpretation of Lex. But there's someone in Area 51 doing like weird alien stuff. I'm thinking it's Brainiac, but that's another
It,
great villain that I enjoy a lot.
it's like a human Brainiac or something because he's clearly has miniature cities that are like, and it's horrifying too because you see
Yeah,
like tiny text bubbles that are like kill us kind of thing because
right.
there's so much fucked up shit going on in it. And then there's
Oh,
that great like page that's just like, this is what happened in the Kent farm, and we have no idea if the Kents are even alive. We just know there's a Kent farm.
yeah, we see the ran down Kent farm property of Lazarus Corp. So this Lazarus Corp, it begins with the letter L. Someone is this going to be like Lex Corp, Luthor Corp? Is it tied to Lex in some way, or what will his role be in this story? But there is one piece of dialogue that I really liked from Superman's suit talking to him. When Superman is saying, just give me some time to make sure these miners are safe, and then the suit tells him, Kal-El, this is a planet of combustion engines, fanatical religions, and thermonuclear weapons. These people are never safe. And I was like, damn, that is the world that I live in.
That's such a fucked up line, and yeah, that's the same thought I had. I was like, oh no, he's not wrong. And yeah, I can't wait. I can't fucking wait to see what the rest of the series is like. And like I said, I can't wait for them all to meet. Like, because we know eventually that will happen. We just don't. And this is the other reason I'm happy with the way they're doing it. Because the New 52 was like, here's your Justice League right away. Like, there's no build up to it. And I'm happy that they were smart enough to be like, look, eventually we're gonna do a Flash one, because I know they announced the Flash one. We don't know what's going to happen with the rest of them either so far.
Martian Manhunter, though. Martian Manhunter is coming, so
yeah. That's. I know some people are speculating. There was an when DC All In happened, the DC All In special happened. People were speculating that the people that are on that cover might be having their own thing, possibly, but everyone's not really sure. And the Flash one, they announced it's Wally right away. Like, there's no Barry, so we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that we're probably both on the same page, but Wally or Barry, who's your Flash?
Wally, personally, but that's because that's who he was when I was growing up,
right?
And all the shows had him as Wally.
But like, I came into Flash with like the Mark Waid stuff and the Jeff Johns stuff, and so like that just seems normal to me for Wally West to be Flash.
No, yeah, because the funniest thing is that when I finally started getting in the comics eventually, because again, I lived in a small town, didn't really have a comic book shop. When I finally did, Barry Allen came to life like a year later after Blackest Night. Like, they brought him back, and then everything that Barry is known for now happened at that point because of Jeff Johns. And so my version of Barry is the modern version, so I don't even know that much about him from the past, but I know a lot about Wally because of all that, all that other stuff and the great omnibuses they've come out with since then.
The only thing I knew about Barry Allen, like the only story I'd ever read with him, really was Crisis on Infinite Earths when he died.
Yeah, when he dies.
And then I never read anything with him again until Final Crisis when he came back.
Yeah, it was amazing when he finally came back, and then yeah, everything we know about Barry now, his mom getting killed, his dad being framed, all that stuff happened after he came back to life. None of that stuff existed prior to that.
Yeah, none of that was in like the Silver Age continuity. So
yeah.
Well, I do have these recorded questions that we answered previously. So if people go back and check our previous podcast episode, they can hear us talk about some things like how we got into becoming fans of the character, our favorite looks for the character, the lesser known Superman villains or allies that we are particularly fond of, and our preference on if we like a more powerful Superman or a more reined in Superman. That's kind of a age old debate in the Superman fandom, but we talked about all of that stuff last time. We have some new questions for this episode. We cover our all-time favorite depictions of Superman outside of the comics, how we feel about Superman and Batman as friends or enemies, where we stand on if Clark or Superman is the real person, and some of the stuff we're looking forward to with Superman coming soon. So I'll go ahead and hit play on that, but folks should stick around because then at the end of this pre-recorded session, we're going to talk about our least favorite takes on Superman. So I think that'll be some juicy content. So I'm gonna hit play on this, and then we'll be back after that. Superman out of the comics. The next question we have: what is your all-time favorite depiction of Superman out of the comics?
Did you go first last time, or there's?
Yeah, it's your turn.
Right. This is a tricky one. I actually had to think about this one for a while because for a long time my answer was actually Lois and Clark, like legitimately, and it's because it showed Clark as a very like confident person as well as being when he's Superman. There's something very real about that, and so he's very nice. And so people latch on to how nice and great he is. But it got upended very quickly once My Adventures with Superman started. Because My Adventures with Superman, I can finally point to a cartoon or something that's like, because we've talked to people for years where they're like, I don't understand Superman. Like I don't understand why you love him. I don't understand why people think he's such a nice guy. and that show is like the epitome of Clark Kent is the nicest human being on the planet, and as both Clark and as Superman, and all he wants to do is do what's right, and he's the most relatable version of that character I have ever seen outside of comics, to the point where I've had friends finally being like, I get it now, and it's amazing. I love it so much.
No, that totally makes sense, though. Both of those shows are kind of like the most like, okay, we're gonna focus on Clark, and it's kind of even like in the title of like My Adventures with Superman. It's like, well, Superman is like this like other concept, but like this boy's name is Clark, and it's like him and his friends, or his friend and his girlfriend, and like it's like their adventures with like this idea of Superman, you know. But like Clark is the main character of both those shows, I guess.
Oh, 100%. And I know people have had issues in the past where, Clark is the guy and Superman's what he can do. Like, I know that's a quote from Lois and Clark that people argue about all the time, because people have various. Here's the thing about Superman that no one will ever agree on, which is Superman the real person, is Clark the mask, or is it vice versa? And in my opinion, the answer is both. Is that I think both versions are both him, but also not him, because he can act to be very timid. Because, in my opinion, Superman is a very timid guy. He just has to put on a brave face for people because he's out and everybody looks up to him, which is what My Adventures of Superman does a great job with, which is the fact that he is very anxious. But once he's Superman, everybody's like, "Oh, Superman's here. Everything will be fine." He's like, "Well, fuck. I have to be like, hey, I'm here and now everything's fine." And it makes for some great drama because of it, because it's a very human story that you can connect with. And I know Lois and Clark didn't always have that, but it did in some ways, because he's like, Clark Kent is such a nice guy and he's trying to just do what's best in the world, even though the world's like, hey, that might not be as easy as it sounds.
Yeah, that's something that I want to ask you more about in a moment, because that's one of the questions that we have coming up, touches on the two separate personalities of Superman, with Clark and Superman. But I think for me, with my favorite depiction of Superman outside of the comics, a big part of me really wants to say My Adventures with Superman. But I have to give credit to the 1978 movie, just because I think it inspired so much great superhero media to come after that. Like, I don't, if that movie hadn't have been as successful as it was, and it took Superman seriously, it didn't make it into a big joke, kind of how I love like the Adam West Batman, but that was kind of the criticism of like the 60s Batman show, is like, well, you're satirizing this material, you know, what if you embraced it and kind of took it seriously? And Superman the movie did that, and it was like Richard Donner talked about how, like, yeah, he was like the first director who kind of like looked at that project and wanted to approach that with a bit of seriousness to it. And as a result, you know, we got Tim Burton's Batman in '89. We got like all the like modern superhero movies. You know, like Bryan Singer talks about like when he was making X-Men. He was actually like working for like Richard Donner's production company on that. But Kevin Feige at, you know, Marvel Studios talks a lot about Superman the movie, and how whenever they were starting like a new like Marvel movie, he would like show that to like the director and be like, you know, we want to take this kind of approach. I think Sam Raimi on like the Spider-Man movies was also very inspired by Donner's approach to Superman. So yeah,
No,
that's
that's a
the
great answer, because, like you said, when you get Marlon Brando, because at this point Marlon Brando was not considered the way he is now, kind of a crazy person. But at the time he was still like,
yeah,
he was still
there's like
Marlon goddamn Brando,
the biggest actor in the world.
And so they got him for it, and he added so much gravitas to that thing. And even he had ideas that ended up on there, and one of his ideas was like, I want the S on me. I want it to be like a thing. And so he accidentally made this S being a crest for the rest of time, kind of thing.
And that movie had a big impact on like the John Byrne Man of Steel Superman comics in the 80s. You know, it kind of like it made Krypton more sci-fi and more alien. And I agree
Yeah,
with you. They kind of went like too far, making it like too like cold and inhuman. But like that was very movie inspired. Like I think the way that Smallville was handled, and you know, getting Clark back at the newspaper, not at the TV station, like a lot of that stuff came from the kind of the movie, reintroducing a lot of the earlier stuff, and not where like the Silver and Bronze Age had kind of kind of evolved. Like yeah, like they got Clark, you know, out of the newspaper and working as a TV reporter.
which I think is still funny that that was the thing they tried, and it worked for the most part. But it's harder to like explain. It's harder for him to stop what he's doing and then go be Superman when if you're on television, which I thought was really funny.
Yeah.
And where that's why it works in that, and then even it made fun of some of the stuff that the world was changing around them, which is the one that I point to the most is the phone booth sequence where he it's the first time he changes in Superman. He goes out to change to the Superman, and he looks, and at this point, there weren't really phone booths anymore. Everything was the payphones that are on the wall,
Right.
and so he walks by and he looks at it, and he's like, "Well, I can't do that here. Like, there's like I'm not hidden," and so he walks off, and it's fun because it took it seriously, but it also was like this is the current world we live in. And so he also had to grow up with the times because of it, ironically enough. And there's a great thing about Christopher Reeve's Superman that I didn't think about until somebody said it, which is that when you look at a picture of Christopher Reeve as Superman behind the scenes and stuff like that, and there's no like, you know, wires or stuff that you can see in the area, you're like, that's Superman. That man existed in real life. Like you can point to him, like I remember when Superman was real because you can just look at it. Like,
Yeah.
there's some actors who you can still do that with now. When you look at images of certain people, you're like, no, that guy's real. He's right there. Like I can point to a picture of him. Like there's a bunch of pictures of Spider-Man, because there's I didn't know this for a long time, which is that that Marvel actually had an actual guy who could dress like Spider-Man, and they made the suits for him, but they were so well made that people are like, I remember when Spider-Man was real, because you can just point at that because they did such a good job with it. And so I love that about Christopher Reeve Superman is that he feels like the most real version of that character in everything, and I can't help but love it for that
Yeah,
reason.
and he was so young when they hired him. I think he was 25 when he was cast for the first movie, and it's hard to
He
believe
was.
that he had like the maturity to be able to. But yeah, he's just could so like just like turn it on and just like present himself as Superman, and there he was.
It shocks me to this day that he that was so perfect, and I don't think I will ever get anything that fully perfect again.
Our seventh question here is: do you like Batman and Superman as friends? What level of antagonism do you like between them, if any?
Did I go first, or did you go first?
I think it's your turn.
All right. I like them as friends, but I like them as I like them. I like the idea that they start off as like having opposing views at first,
Mm-hmm.
because that's one of the things I like about the two of them is they are the opposites of each other when it comes to how they provide hope to their cities, which is that Superman provides hope by being bright, colorful. You always can look up in the sky and you'll know he's there, kind of thing. And so you're so like it's like it sounds weird, but he's giving hope by being hopeful, and I love that. And then you have Batman on the other end. He's giving hope to the city not because you always know he's there, because sometimes you have no idea he's even there because he's in the shadows, but he's giving hope to the people of Gotham because criminals are afraid of him. They're afraid of the very idea of running into Batman. There's a great story that I can tell you about that too. It's have you ever read? It's called it was a giant. It was a Superman 80-page giant. I've told this story to a shit ton of people because it's one of my favorite stories in that comic, which is it's about a bunch of people. It's about a bunch of criminals in a car talking about their run-ins with other superheroes. And so it's like one guy's like, I once was robbing Central City.
It's kind of like Almost Got 'Em, the BTAS episode.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the criminals are talking about it. The Central City one makes me laugh because he's like, well, I was robbing, I think, a bank or a convenience store, and he's like, and I never even saw the Flash. I blinked, my gun was gone. I blinked, my friends were gone. I blinked, I was in jail. Like he never saw the Flash. He was like, it sucked. I was very annoyed. And my favorite is the Batman one because he's like, yeah, we were just robbing some store. It was like we weren't doing anything that would be considered, violent. Like we weren't trying to murder people. We figured he was busy with the Joker or something, and he saw us, and he was so angry. He had this look on his face where he's like, I can't believe you're doing crime in my city. Like he's taking it personally that we are there robbing a television. And he beat the shit out of us. And so they were terrified of ever running into Batman again. But the reason I love that story is the way it ends, because they're like, because the reason they're having this conversation, they're like, we're going to ask you again, why did we try to do crime in Metropolis? And so it cuts out, it finally like zooms out essentially, and it turns out the car is being carried by Superman this entire time. He's been taking him to jail. He puts the car down, he opens the door, and when they get out, he's like, okay, I know that you guys are doing this because you need money. If you ever need help, or if you ever need like a reference for something, I know some people who could give you a job. I know some good lawyers if you need help trying to get out of this so you can go straight. Like, he's giving them all these great advice. Like he's just like, I want you to turn your life around is what he's telling them. And he's like, this is why I like doing crime in Metropolis, because this man cares. This man loves us.
Better city to do crime in. I like that.
It's so funny. And that's like I said, that's the opposites. That's a good example of showing the opposites of the two of them. And that was one of the few things I liked about Batman v Superman is Clark being like, I don't understand why people just let this guy run around terrorizing people. Like, I just don't get it, kind of thing. And I like that idea that Superman doesn't understand Batman when he first meets him. I think that's a great idea. Yeah. And so that version of the antagonistic stuff, I love it, because John Byrne did a great version of that too, because he started that after Frank Miller made them fight each other to the death. Which is that, like, he's like, I don't agree with your methods, but I like the fact that it turns out you're not as crazy as I thought you were.
Yeah, that was a great way to handle it. And that Man of Steel issue where Batman meets Superman with Magpie, and like they team up for the first time, I guess. That's a really cool way I think that really informed, for example, the way that Superman the Animated Series handled it when they brought Batman back from Batman the Animated Series, and they had like their crossover in World's Finest. But I think that was like very much influenced by the John Byrne dynamic that he introduced into the comics. I agree with you that, like, I do like them as friends, but I love when they can be at odds against each other. Because, like, in that depiction, when in the Justice League animated show, like, there is a lot of like good drama of like the two of them when they would have disagreements, and that's such like a standard staple of the superhero genre is artists love to draw like two beloved superheroes fighting each other. So, like, of course, like, your two big granddaddy superheroes of like the founding father characters of the entire genre. Like, who wouldn't want to see them pitted against each other somewhat regularly? So I get it, but I do kind of get agitated with the
the pop cultural insistence that like Batman is cooler than Superman, or like, well, Batman would beat Superman in a fight because Frank Miller made it happen in the '80s, and that was like a great I guess iconic moment in like Batman's history and like The Dark Knight Returns, and there's like this big adult comic of like Batman beating the shit out of Superman, but that being followed with this huge newsworthy story of, oh, DC Comics are publishing a story where they kill Superman. I think like ever since then it's just kind of been like, oh well, Superman is like the weaker character of the two.
Which never made sense to me, and it still doesn't make sense to me. There's because when people are like, "Well, he fought him in Frank Miller, the Dark Knight Returns," I'm like, "Did you read that story? Do you understand what happened in that fight?" Because two things happened in that fight that I always point to. Superman got hit by a nuke before that fight happened. The sun was blocked because of the nuke going off.
Yeah, he was nerfed.
And the third one is that Batman didn't win that fight on his own at all. That was a team effort. 3 people are involved in that fight. It's him, it's Robin, and it's the Green Arrow. Without the other 2 people, Batman would have lost that fight easily. Because Batman is and the other thing is Batman knows full well that Clark doesn't want to kill him. He's using everything to his advantage. He knows full well this fight is one-sided, and he knows he's going to lose if he doesn't have a very, very good plan ready once Clark gets there. And even then, he fakes his death in the middle of that fight. Like, he's like, I won, psych, and then he kills himself. He fakes his death, because he knows full well that Clark is just going to recover after a while and whoop his ass.
And even like at the end of that story, like they're still friends at the end when Clark hears the heartbeat and is like, "Oh, cool! I'm glad he's still." He has like that little like cheeky smile or whatever.
He winks. Yeah, he winks at is it Carrie? I think that's her name, Carrie. Like, he's just like, oh, he's alive, and I'm happy for that because he's my friend still. Like, I love that they're still friends even after everything that's going on. Because a lot of people, this is another example of people taking a story the wrong way because they don't understand the time frame it's written, which is that everyone's like, Superman's just a stooge because he's working for Reagan essentially in that comic. But that was the point of it, is the idea is that like it's showing the bad side of blindly following your government kind of thing. And so Superman's just being used as an allegory of the US government doing bad things kind of thing. And also the fact that them fighting each other was unheard of at this point, because at this point, the world's finest comics, you'll see all the covers where they're doing like trapeze shit together. Like they're super best friends to the point where they're like high-fiving each other and like they're borderline parents to Robin in those comics kind of thing, because that's how close they are in that time frame. And so everybody's just like, yeah, they absolutely would fight. I'm like, no, that's the culmination of like a whole history you guys don't understand. And that's why I was happy that as time has gone on, they've been back to being great friends. There's I don't remember the story name. No, Up in the Sky. It's have you ever read that Tom King's?
The Tom King one, yeah.
I love that story for multiple reasons. I have some issues here and there, but I love the final issue immensely. The final 2 issues of that story are chef's kiss. I cry every time. But there's the point where he's flying with the girl, and she's asking him questions, and it has my favorite answer to Batman v Superman I've ever heard in my entire life.
Oh yeah. Where
he's just like, who would win? He's like, he would. They're like, really? Even with everything? He's like, yeah, I'd let him win. Because I think I think he needs it. He's depressed all the time. Like, he needs the win.
Yeah, totally. Like, that's okay. Like, yeah, Batman can have it. Like, Superman's above even like caring about it. But
although my second favorite answer is really funny. There's it's a part of a Batman Superman title of it's Mixie Spitalik and Bat might have an argument of who would win. And Mixie's like, this is what would happen. As Superman just hits him really hard in the ground into a crater, and he just dies, and he goes to the end.
Well, we were all thinking it, so someone finally had
Kills
to
me
draw
every
it.
time.
But
It's so funny.
I think that like people might be like a little like Batmaned out just with like all like the Batman movies and stuff lately. I think like people are just every time there's like a new like actor playing the Joker, I just hear like a lot of people like what like again. So like I'm thinking that maybe like in an era where people might be like, okay, we've had like so much Batman over the decades. I think there might be more of like an appetite for Superman. So I'm hoping that bodes well for the upcoming James Gunn movie next year.
Oh, 100%. There's there was it was a running gag. It was an inside joke for a while, only to comic book fans for a bit there, is that when you read DC comics, it's 99% Bat books, and they would throw some sprinkles at other people, being like, here's some Superman stuff, I guess, and here's some like, if you're lucky, like any other character kind of thing. Like it was like 90% Batman. There's a comic cover I used to use all the time from Zero Hour where it's Superman in the middle and he's surrounded by different incarnations of Batman. I used to joke this is what it was like being a Superman fan during this specific period of time, where it's just you and you're surrounded by Batman fans basically. And I used to joke about that because it was, again, it was an inside joke for a long time, until one day the rest of the world finally noticed. The rest of the world finally noticed. They're like, there's a lot of Batman shows. There's a lot of Batman cartoons. There's a lot of Batman movies. I just realized I don't really see anything else. And people finally got, like you said, people are finally tired of it. They're like, look, I don't want to see him fight the Joker for the 1,000th time. There's a giant rogues gallery out there, and I've seen him fight the same guys like 8 times now. Like, I don't need another Two-Face story. I don't need another Joker story. I don't even need another fucking Bane story at this point. They're like, I need to see him fight Clayface. I need them to see him fight so many other people, and you guys just will not do it. And even in cartoons, I feel like that's the same thing. Games as well, and like once Dan Didio was gone, all the non-Bat books were raised up immediately. I noticed it right away. And the thing I point to, the other thing that Batman's saturated with, is merchandise. Batman has so much merchandise, it's not even funny. Like,
yeah, like I bet I could find a Caped Crusader T-shirt, but I can't find a My Adventures with Superman shirt.
Exactly. I had the moment I noticed that it was one-sided as hell was during the anniversaries, because Superman's the oldest character, pretty much one of the oldest super comic characters in existence. Like,
Right.
He is the guy. And when they did an anniversary for him, they're like, here's a really cool animated short. I'm like, cool, that's really cool. And like, what else do you got? It's like, here's the short. I'm like, okay. Like, do you have any
Yeah.
figures and shirts and stuff? It's like, oh, we got like maybe like 5 of them. And then the Batman anniversary happened. They're like, get your shirts, get your mugs, get your figures, get your wall prints, get
Yeah.
your hats, get your
It's like
underwear. It's like, what's happening?
The Daffy and Bugs skit from like the Batman '89 VHS.
Exactly. And then the worst part was that after the 75th anniversary of Superman, they did the 80th. I think it was the 80th or the 85th anniversary or something like that. They gave the same short again. Like, here's the short. It's like, this is the same short. All you did was change the number at the end. It's literally all you did. And they're like, there's the short. It's like, what else do you got? It's the same short. We're going to show you the same short again, but instead of it ending with him landing on a 75, he doesn't even land. He just flies, and then we change it to like 80.
Well, maybe we'll get it again for 85.
I was like, what? And then Batman's like, yeah, we made a whole other new short. Now there's a new short. Like, he got 2 shorts. Like, one of the shorts is that it's a Batman Beyond short, I think in the 80th one, where he's fighting a bunch of like Batman robots.
And it was Darwin Cook did that one. And then
exactly. And then before that, we got the it was like a 1940 short that's
Bruce
kind
Timm
of
made, yeah,
which is kind of like a prototype to the Caped Crusader when you watch it.
Yeah.
You
That's
realize
a great
that's what they were
point.
doing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he got 2 shorts, and then he got a billion things, and Batman has a Batman Day.
But why ain't there a Superman Day?
I know there is one, but the problem is that they don't celebrate it even close to that. The only place that celebrates it like that is that Metropolis. There's a city of
Metropolis,
Metropolis.
Illinois, right?
Yeah, they actually will celebrate Superman Day there, but you will rarely ever hear about it outside of Superman fans. And it's maddening.
Oh, yeah, that is frustrating.
And good luck if you're a fan of anybody else. When Green Arrow's anniversary came out, they're like, "So what are you gonna do? We're gonna do something? I don't know what you expect me to do. Here's that same anniversary book we made, but now it says 80 on it."
Maybe we'll have a big Aquaman anniversary.
Yeah, it makes me sad. It's honestly it's the same with the games too, but we're not talking about games. So
We should at some point. But let me ask you more about this. We talked about this a little bit, but the question number 8, where do you stand on the philosophical question of whether Clark and Superman are different personas, or if either of them is more real? I think you said that like they're both real.
my answer is both. That's always been my answer. I know people think of it as a cop out because I've had this conversation on Twitter before. Because I treat it the way you treat I treat it the way that I treat myself when it comes to me at home and me at work. Because when I'm at work, there's a part of me that comes out that I don't understand how or why. That's somehow way more confident and way more talky sometimes with people in a way that like some people are like some people are upset with that version of my take because they're like, well, that makes it seem like Superman treats it like a job. I'm like, well, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is personality-wise, he has versions of his personality that he can only show when he's Clark Kent, which to me is his anxiety, which is that like he can be very anxious when he can be Clark, and he's allowed to be timid when he's Clark. He doesn't have to be.
He doesn't have to be Superman.
He doesn't have to be on all the time.
Yeah.
He can finally be like, okay, I'm just gonna relax in the day. I'm just gonna watch something kind of thing. I can read something. I don't have to be outwardly like everything's gonna be all right, kind of thing. And again, that's why people are like, you're treating it like as if it's a burden. I'm like, well, that's not how I see it. I see it the way when a person just says, I can't be on all the time. Is the term people use where they're like, I have to be up front with people. I have to, like, when they're hanging out with people is a good example of that, because that's another good example. You, when you're hanging out with people versus you hanging out by yourself in a room, kind of thing. Like, because you can't, like, you don't have the spoons to be on at all times.
Right.
So because eventually you're like, I'm tired. I need to go home, kind of thing. And usually when that happens, people get less talkative. They get kind of tired. They're just like, yeah, whatever. Like, whatever conversation you're having, I'm not here for it at the moment, only because I'm tired, kind of thing. And so, to me, that's Clark Kent. That's the times he's allowed to still be himself, but be allowed to relax fully and just have fun with a conversation, instead of having to be like instead of being like, look, like instead of like grabbing somebody who's having like a hard time and being like, look, I'm here for you. Whatever you need, like I'm happy to help you with. And of course he's still happy to do that as Clark, but the difference is that that's not the automatic thing that he's going to tell you. Instead, the automatic thing is going to be like, how did your day go, kind of thing. And if somebody has an issue with something, then he'll turn on his like, hey, what can I do to help you, kind of thing, like the way a normal person has a conversation, instead of having a conversation with a firefighter, for example. Like, when you meet a firefighter, there's a reason you're talking to a firefighter, because some shit's going down, kind of thing. But when you see a firefighter outside of that, they're going to have a normal conversation with you. And that's how I see Superman. Is I see Superman as a guy where both sides of his personality are coming through fully. And with Superman, he's got all of it still. Don't get me wrong. Superman is still his true self to the maximum version he can be, because he doesn't have to hide anything. But with Clark Kent, it's the version of him where he's allowed to relax, in my opinion. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
like,
no, that makes sense.
It's hard to explain fully, but that's that's the reason I've always said both of those
R-
are him.
Right, like that, he has that time where he permits himself. He doesn't have to be outwardly presenting as Superman, as like the ultimate hero who's going to save the day that everyone else can trust in. He doesn't have to present that to anyone. Um, like I kind of think of it as there's like three different Clarks. I make it like even more complicated, but you have like the bumbling reporter persona. That's a bit of a performance, but also I
Yes.
do think like the public superhero is also a bit of a performance. But I think secret identity stuff in general, I think a lot of it can be like very relatable and relevant, and I do kind of wish that more superhero stories would embrace that and not try to like shy away from it. You know, kind of like the Michael Bendis famous approach of where he like outwardly has been saying for years that he doesn't like secret identities and
Oh, he refuses. That's why Ultimate Spider-Man, his mask falls off every 20 seconds.
exactly. But I think I can't like speak for this community, but I've heard a lot of queer people say that they find that really relatable, like the idea of having to hide who you really are or have that secret identity that you have to have like your own like time and space where you can be yourself. Or I also can read it a lot as like a neuro spicy person. There's a lot of like masking and when you have to mask and when you can like unmask.
Yeah, no, that's a great. That's actually no, that's a perfect example of it. Because I've talked to people about that the same way. They talk about that with him because he's the one that is allowed to like he has that mask thing. Because people point at Reed Richards a lot too for being a neurospicy guy, but that guy's allowed to be his spicy self to the fullest,
Right.
kind of thing. Where Superman has the opposite, where he's like he has that sort of masking that he's doing, and like you said, the bumbling thing. That's the one part that I know is not really like that, but it's also fun to me because to me it's him being like I'm allowed to make mistakes and people won't
Yeah.
judge me for it. Kind of
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
And so he gets to have fun with it. He's like, oh, I can drop coffee, and people are like, it's okay, Clark, you're okay. Like, are you fine? He's like, no, I'm great. I'm just I'm a little shook it up, but he's allowed to say shit like that out loud, even though sometimes it's not true. And but the only true version of himself, in my opinion, is when he's finally allowed to be married to Lois and they're just hanging out at home, because he can be himself to the fullest in both ways when it comes to his parents and when it comes to his family.
That's what I was gonna add. I was gonna say yes, I agree with you, but also when he like flies back home to Smallville and he can just like sit down at like the kitchen table with Ma and Pa and just talk about whatever's going on.
Yeah,
Like,
because My Adventures of Superman does that wonderfully because
Yeah.
he is a big nerd. He's a dork. And Lois and Clark and Superman and Lois does a really good job with it as well because he's with his family and they're like, yeah, this man is Superman, but when he's with his kids and his wife, that dude is giant nerd. That dude is such a dork, and it's adorable because he doesn't have to hide who he is with them. He doesn't have to be like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, I dropped my coffee. Instead, he's like, hey, how'd your day go? Like, I'm so happy for you, kind of thing. But also at the same time, if he drops something, he doesn't have to be like, "Oh no, I dropped this thing." He's like, "Oh no, I just dropped the thing." But he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to be bumbling. He doesn't have to put on a facade. He can still be himself. But it turns out his self is nerdy as hell.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of fun you can do with the secret identity stuff, and a lot of credit does need to go to Superman stories for inventing a lot of those tropes that like other characters would definitely use. But I mean, like there wasn't like too many like before him. You have like Zorro, the Scarlet Pimpernel, and then like Superman. Is like one of the OGs, and like I think probably the character who's like had secret identity stuff explored the most. You're talking about like how he behaves with his family or like with his like parents or with his kids. Like these are all things that like the character has evolved to like having these different family relationships over the decades. There was like a time when his parents weren't like a really big deal. That was something that like John Byrne uh did, which I think might have been influenced by the Richard Donner movie. But then you get to the more recent years where like yeah, you have like Superman as a parent, as a father. So The last question that we have, this is a fun one, but just what are some of the things you're most excited about for Superman currently that are coming out right now and that will be coming out next year in 2025?
Well, the obvious answer is Superman the movie, or
Yeah.
not the movie, but like
Not Superman
I'm,
the movie, but Superman the
Superman,
movie.
because that's the thing I didn't realize when James Gunn had said it. He's like Superman the movie is called Superman the movie. That's literally its actual title. It's
Yeah.
not just Superman. So he's like, so I'm allowed to just call it Superman. I was like, oh my god, I didn't even consider that. Like, it never occurred to me that that's what he could have done.
Yeah, it's
before
like
that, what was it? Because wasn't there like another name for it before that?
it was Superman Legacy for a little bit. But
That's right. That's
I'm
what
glad they dropped that. Yeah, just Superman. I think that's cool because this is supposed to be it's not an origin movie, but yet it is kind of a clean slate. So it needs to be
Yeah.
new audience friendly and with like no subtitle on there, just Superman. It's like, oh, it's kind of like the Batman. It's like this is okay, going to be like its own thing. I get it.
Exactly, and I'm excited for that. The costume's really cool. People, you can already buy costumes of that suit. Like, people have already made costumes you can buy of it.
I was at a convention yesterday. We're recording this on October 26th, but I was at a convention yesterday, SpaceCon in San Antonio, and there was a guy and he had like it looked screen accurate as hell just based on whatever leaked photos have been circulating.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's my favorite thing about fandom in general. There's a great story about this years ago involving Star Wars, where it's this it's a very old picture of this girl. She has an outfit that is just the
Like
rebel
X-wing
flight
pilot suit. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and this is 1977. There are no ways of getting those pictures anywhere at that point. There was not like, so she watched that movie 1,000 times or something and just took note of every little thing. And imagine that idea, or not, you don't even have to imagine it. Like you said, like that guy just looked at pictures of that thing, because there's a lot of different pictures of it, like leaks and official. That's like almost like 360s that you can see every little angle of him, except for like, under the cape, because you can't see his back, kind of thing, for some of the shots. And so they just looked at that and they made it, and you can buy that. People just like, there's a website that has been advertising me. Is like, do you just want the suit? We can just sell you the suit for like $150. Like right now, I'm just like, I kind of want it, but I don't know if I should, kind of thing. And so it's like, that's how easy it is to buy these things now. And you know what? I've never been happier about that in my entire life, because when I was growing up, it was impossible to get stuff like that. Like, you just had the hope for the best that a Walmart or something had like a pre-made outfit, and hope that your parents bought it for you.
I haven't thought about this in years, but you just like triggered a memory. But when I was really little, my grandma like sewed a Superman costume for me one year for Halloween, and she bought like the pattern, and it had like the iron-on insignia for like the
Oh, wow.
S, and she like had the like ironed that onto the. But I remember, this is so funny. I think I was maybe 6. Was this like, I think like Halloween 1992, but it did not have the yellow S on the back of the cape, and I remember being like, but I wanted to have like the yellow S like the back of the cape in like the movie, and she's like, like, shut up, kid, this is the best you're gonna get. But yeah, I haven't thought about that in years. Well,
Yeah, no, it's a whole new world, and I'm very happy with it, because kids can now grow up and be like, I want that suit, and you can literally buy it if you want. There's so many costumes like that, where if it's a character that's popular enough, you can just be like, no, I want that, and then you can get it. When I grew up, even even up into my teens, I had a hard time finding anything. Like, and then Hot Topic finally started selling them, and then that was the easiest way to get those things eventually. But costume wise, it was still kind of a pain in the ass, because even though the rise of comics was happening, a lot of the costumes were still being made for kids at that point.
mm-hmm.
So if I wanted to be Spider-Man, I had to really go out of my way to find one, or Superman, or any character. Like, and people make their outfits even now. because they're video game characters that you can't always buy outfits for.
Well,
But there's also comic characters you can't just buy. Like you're never gonna find somebody who sells a Metamorpho costume right now.
well, maybe.
What I mean right now because he's supposed to be in that James Gunn movie.
He's
so
going to
might,
be in
who knows?
a major motion picture from Warner Brothers next year. So, yeah, I'm looking forward.
The only reason you can't get it now is purely because no one knows what he looks like yet with CGI.
Yeah,
I guarantee it.
Maybe. Oh, I hope in that first trailer, I hope we get some Metamorpho. That'd be cool if they. I want some look at like these other DC heroes. I bet they show that off because we already know so much about that.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many characters that we've seen behind the scenes stuff, but we don't know. We know that's not what they look like. Yeah.
What else other than like the Gun movie? There's like other stuff going on. I'm not caught up on it, but the final season of Superman and Lois is coming out right now.
Yes, it's currently still happening. I think it's going to end before the year's up, but I'm not 100% certain because they only got 10 episodes. They're 4 episodes in, so they're already like halfway through.
But I am a fan of that show. Like I'm looking forward to catching up, and
it's great. I'm all caught up at the moment. They're doing a Lex Luthor storyline, but they're also, I guess, spoiler alert, they did a Death of Superman, but it was in every trailer. It was in every commercial, every trailer for the beginning of the season. But they did a Death of Superman storyline in it too, in a kind of one of the craziest ways I've seen it be done, to be honest. But at the same time, and even the way they resolve it's also kind of weird to me. But sure, I'll go with it. And then they're doing a lot more stuff with the family. They're adding more, but they're only doing what they can because their budget was slashed. There's so many things they couldn't do again because of it, and it's a little heartbreaking because you're like, man, I wish there was more of certain characters that I know you wanted to do something with, but you can't now because of what happened. And hell, they had a hard time bringing Sam Lane back. They were like, we want to bring you back for more episodes, and he's like, I don't know if I want to now based on how little I would be in it now. I was like, yeah, but we need to finish the storyline because he's kidnapped at the end of the last season. So you're just like, if he didn't come back, they would have had to be like, oh, he died off screen or something.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
what do you do with that?
Or you do like, oh, he had plastic surgery, which
exactly.
Smallville had to do that one time when they couldn't get an actor to come back. But
I know a few shows that did that actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, Smallville has a very great example of it. I would think it was for Morgan Edge, if I remember correctly.
Right, yeah.
And actually, it ends up working for the storyline. But no, it's really funny when that happens. And I know Batwoman did that actually.
Yeah, I forgot about Batwoman. Man, that show was like had so much potential, didn't it? Once upon a time.
It did.
But
I know I had a friend who was very excited. She loved it, and then what happened with Ruby Rose happened, and then the whole thing went downhill from there. As far as I know, I never saw the rest of it. And then there's so many shows that do that, and comic book wise too, I'm really enjoying what they're doing right now. Right now, Lex Luthor has amnesia, so I'm curious to see what they do with that.
That's happened to him a few times.
Yeah, he there was the end of a Brainiac storyline where he fixes something by like putting the helmet on his head and like using his intelligence to sort of fight back against Brainiac's programming, so he can like so they can defeat Brainiac. But it ends with him gaining amnesia at the very end. And the latest issue was really funny because they brought his daughter back too, actually, Lena Luthor.
Cool.
Because she was, for you guys who don't know, at the end of Superman, Our Worlds at War, he brings back his daughter after she was kidnapped by Brainiac 13. And then you never see her again. Like the comics just stopped using her one day. And then so finally, Joshua Williamson was like, we're bringing her back. And she has the Brainiac scar on her head from that storyline. And so it's funny. So she's showing him like old footage of him because he has amnesia. And the footage is him in his like armor yelling, "I'm gonna kill you, Superman!" like as loud as he can. And it cuts to Lex with his beard, and he's just like, "No, I don't remember any of this, and I really don't want to, because this is horrifying." And it's really funny because Lex tried to change his ways in the beginning of like the current run stuff, And I found that fascinating
Yeah,
too, because
Williamson's been doing a big Lex run, right? I haven't
yeah,
read it. I haven't read anything post Bendis. I plan to start catching up on some Superman titles very
you
soon.
absolutely
But
should. It's a lot of fun. Right now, Mark Waid's doing a story in Action Comics that takes place before Absolute Power happened that involves the Phantom Zone, which I'm really enjoying right now. And right now, this is it's not really a spoiler because it's on the cover of the latest Superman. Lois has powers right now because after Absolute Power happened, a bunch of powers they didn't return to all the superheroes for some reason. Some of them ended up with somebody else, and for some reason Lois ended up with them. And so she's like, "I'm Superwoman right now," and so they're about to fight Doomsday again because Doomsday escaped hell because Doomsday was in hell for a bit, and somehow he punched his way out of hell because Doomsday is
that's
that
what he
kind of
does.
guy.
He punches.
Is
He
that
he
kind of
gets
guy.
buried and he punches his way back out.
And so they're using him and I think it's Time Trapper if I remember the name of it, and they're doing it. And so they're doing an interest like that just happened. They're doing an interesting story. I'm curious to
Okay.
see how that plays out as well. And then there's so much going on with their arcs. I don't even know what they're going to do with John right now. John Kent after what happened in Absolute Power. I'm curious to see what they do with him still, and the rest of the Super family because there's still characters I feel like aren't being used that often. Because Supergirl has they're doing a Power Girl story or there's a Power Girl title right now, which is about 50-50. I'm like, there's some weird characterization in this, but I'll go with it. But no, the Super family has never been in a better position right now, and since before I want to say before 2008, because
Yeah.
prior to that, I feel like the second the New 52 happened, every character just got demoted for like a long time.
Around
And
like 2008, there was like some cool stuff. Like we were talking about some like the Jeff Johns like Action Comics run with like New
yeah,
Krypton and stuff. But we also had was that speaking of Lex Luthor, like Paul Cornell did that cool Lex run in Action after
yeah,
Johns left.
the Black
So
Ring is one of my favorite Lex Luthor stories of all time.
yeah, that was fun. I want to go back and reread that. But
If you guys have
yeah,
never read it, please read it. I think it's really good.
I agree with you. Like you said earlier, the '90s was like a real like golden age for Superman media. But like, I really feel like we have like the potential for like a new golden age right now. With like, My Adventures with Superman is getting a season 3. I'm super excited about covering that. I'm hoping that Superman and Lois has a strong ending, and yeah, I'm super excited for Gunn's movie next year.
Well, yeah, we've never been in a better position. I hope that the movie does well, and I hope because of it that we finally start getting DC games to be like, why don't we make games that aren't Batman related again? And like, I'm amazed to this day. There's only like one real Justice League game, and it was like it played like Ultimate Alliance, and I was like, why didn't you make more than one of
Yeah,
these? This
I
game's
remember that.
great.
It was like a PS2, Xbox era, like
Yeah,
2004, right?
yeah, it came out around the time Ultimate Alliance 1 did, and I'm amazed they didn't make like a 360 version of it. And because it plays like Diablo, if you guys have never don't know what we're talking about, it was called Justice League Heroes, and the arc of it was that like it was a dark side story, and so everybody's like, and you can use a shit ton of Justice League characters, and it was great. I loved it. And it had a lot of costumes as well. And it was exactly what you should do with that type of team game because that's the reason Ultimate Alliance works is because it's like you have all this team of heroes that you can work with,
Did you play the
and then
Young
they never
Justice
did anything
game?
again. Hmm?
Did you play the Young Justice game?
No, I never did. I didn't even know there was one. But
Yeah, it's like set between seasons 1 and 2. I never played it, but I know it allowed you to play like multiple characters. So I'm wondering if it was as good as.
I bet it was very similar. It probably wasn't as like as big budget as that game was, but because that Justice League Heroes game, Ron Perlman was Batman in it.
Nice. Yeah, I remember it being pretty impressive at the time. I haven't thought about it in a while, but that's another fun
Yeah.
thing that we got to talk about at some point. You're such like a huge gamer. I would love to talk Superman games with you. Has there ever been any good ones? I know that there's been some bad ones, and just talk about like the potential of what like a good Superman game would look like. That'd be a fun thing to dig into at some point.
Yeah, there was. I'm just gonna give one of my favorite answers because I know people are gonna be like, "Is it Superman Returns?" I'm like, "Yeah, that one was fine, but it has a terrible fucking ending." because you fight a tornado. No, the easiest answer of all, to at least to me, is it's a PS2 GameCube game called Shadows of Apocalypse. If you guys have never heard of this game, please go find it or watch it on YouTube, because it's just an episode of Superman the Animated Series in a game. They got the whole cast for it. Like literally everyone is in that game, cast-wise. And it's just a story about Superman fighting Metallo, and Darkseid's like, hey, I have an idea. And he basically like gives Lex Luthor some stuff to try to get Metallo back out so they can try to kill Superman using Metallo. And you fight Parasite, you fight Livewire, you fight Metallo, you fight a few other people if I remember correctly, and it's just this fun time because they got Tim Daly, they got everybody, like I said, and it's just it's made to look like the cartoon, and it's a fun time. Like it's a fairly short game too, and it's got a cheat code to just make you invincible if you're having a hard time with it, and it just makes for a really good time.
Yeah, if you're like, I'm supposed to be Superman, damn it, why is this hard?
Yeah, because sometimes the game gets kind of difficult, and
But
so
there's
I
just some
remember,
heavy hitters. There's just some like strong bosses to face off against. It sounds
yeah,
like, so.
and it's a fun time.
I've never
And
played it.
It's great. I highly recommend it if you guys never had. For some reason, the GameCube version is the only one that has one specific cheat code. It's a cheat code to just make you Clark Kent, because there's a Clark Kent model. Because there's a level in the game where you're supposed to just be Clark Kent because he's investigating, so you can't do like all the other stuff that you're supposed to be able to do. So you're not allowed to fly. You're not allowed to do certain things, and so you just run around the level, and because he's supposed to be investigating. But for some reason, the GameCube one had the cheat code that you could just play like that the whole time and looking like Clark Kent. And I was like, that's kind of fun, but I don't know why it's only in that version of that game.
Nice.
But highly recommend it. And like I said, if you guys don't have a PS2 or a GameCube or anything like that, watch it on YouTube, because like I said, it's an episode of Superman the Animated Series just in game form.
I'm gonna check that out. That sounds cool. But this was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to talking more Superman with you. So it sounds like we got like a lot to dig into and talk about. So looking
Dude, I
forward
could
to,
talk forever.
looking
Like I just
forward
bought. If you guys can't see this, but there's an omnibus behind me. It's the Triangle Era omnibus that just came out.
Nice.
And I'm still digging into it, and it's fun. It's great. I'm super happy with it.
I really want to like go and explore that era of I've actually been thinking about just like rereading through that stuff on the app sometime soon, just because I am kind of nostalgic for it these days. So, but yeah, I'd be curious, and if people want to hear us, anything that we've mentioned, if people want to hear us focus more on any of that, please like let us know.
Yeah, and if you guys have any specific questions that you think we can try answering, and because there's plenty of things, because I have a lot of blind spots too. If you guys even have recommendations for Silver Age, Bronze Age stuff, even Golden Age stuff, I would love to hear it.
Likewise.
Okay, and we are back live. But that wrapped up all the pre-recorded questions we had. Some of the stuff in there I kind of forgot that we talked about till I heard it again. But just talking about like Metamorpho being, I said I want Metamorpho in that first Superman trailer. It's really exciting to think about now that like Gunn says, yeah, I got the trailer on my laptop, like right here, like ready to go, like we're dropping it soon. So I'm thinking sometime
exciting.
in December.
Yeah, people were wondering if I might be in front of a movie that might come out at that point. Who knows? But we're all very excited at this point.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but whenever we get that trailer, if I have time, I'm going to run to my computer and hop on here and try to do a live reaction to the trailer. So people should subscribe to the Supermaniacs YouTube channel so you don't miss that. Because whenever that trailer drops, I'm going to want to do a reaction if I can.
Yeah, it all depends on timing for me at least. But if not, then yeah, just go ahead and do it without me, basically.
And also, at some point, we need to do a podcast episode on Superman video games. I think that would be a really fun topic to explore.
Oh, 100%. There's so many of them that some people don't even know exist.
And we've talked about this a little bit before, but the idea of like if you and I were to pitch like our ideas for a Superman game, because I think we would come up with some But like a lot of people think like, oh yeah, it would be so hard to make a Superman game, but I'm like, I don't know. It's actually something I think about a lot. Like I think it's
Yeah.
pretty doable.
It's really not that difficult with the amount of games we've had that have done stuff. But again, we can talk about that later on.
Well, just to wrap up, we talked about our favorite depictions of Superman. You were saying Lois and Clark. I was saying Superman the movie. So, and I think those are like probably pretty popular ones. I think a lot of people would agree with those takes on Superman. But let's talk about
100%.
what we don't like. The bad takes on Superman. The worst depictions. I don't know if I don't think I'm gonna have as much to say. So I'll take this one first. But the one that I don't like, that some people are gonna like hate me for this. Some people are gonna like agree with me on this, but the Zack Snyder depiction of Superman, not so much Man of Steel, but specifically like Batman v Superman.
Oh yeah,
I
pretty much
just,
of that
like,
onwards.
yeah. That turns out that is my least favorite movie of all time, and largely because of how not only how it handles Superman, I think it does Batman even worse. Like the Batman who will steal a grenade from a hoodlum and then use it on someone else, or like grab a shotgun from someone and then shoot them in the face, is like, yeah, I don't really want like a rampaging murderous psychopath Batman.
Yeah, it's the Snyderverse has been a very big controversial thing to discuss in general. And the funny thing is that, like I said, I know we talked about this piece outside of this, is that I'm not that upset with Snyder's stuff, but that's more because I've read so many behind the scenes things. I'm like, okay, I get what you were trying to do. I just don't think you conveyed it correctly.
But I also really don't like the way that like Jonathan Kent is handled, or the way Martha Kent is handled either, where they're just like, oh yeah, like you don't owe this world anything. Like there's actually a New 52 Grant Morrison issue of Action Comics that has like flashback stuff to Pa Kent, like basically telling Superman like it is your duty to stand up for the little guy and to help people out. You know, like you are obligated to contribute to the greater good. Like you have this great, it's always like the Spider-Man thing, with great power comes great responsibility, but that kind of like rings true with like every superhero, because they're all powerful people.
The
most
Snyder
powerful one.
Exactly. And the Snyderverse, the fact that like that's the reason the Snyderverse never worked for me, is the second Paul Kent says what he says, the entire idea goes down the hill for me. Like, because like you said, it's all about, because like I get what they were trying to convey, the idea that Paul Kent was afraid how people would react to him, but the problem is that like he was willing to let people die for that. Like, is like, it bothers me greatly. Like there was a Superman and Lois tie-in comic, I think this is where it's from, where the kid, I think somebody almost gets hit by a bus, and Clark flies in front of him and grabs it, or grabs whoever it was, and Jonathan's just like, oh my god, like what would have happened? And he's just like, was I just supposed to let him die? He's like, no, of course not. And I'm like, yeah, it's exactly what you're supposed to say, not maybe.
But it doesn't really bother me too much, because like even though I think those movies were pretty popular for a certain stripe of Superman fan recently, I think in the grand scheme of things, the Snyderverse is just going to be like a flash in the pan. That was, oh yeah, that was like that weird little decade in Superman's history where that was the movie depiction, and it sucks that Henry Cavill didn't get better material, because I think he would actually want to be the type of Superman I'd want to see if he just had like that script.
100%. When you watch Joss Whedon's Justice League, you see it. Like it's there on the screen. You're like, oh, it exists. The problem is, his face is CGI'd to hell because of his mustache.
Right.
And then you hear about what Snyder was going to do with him in other movies, and you're like, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, strong agree. I am glad that didn't happen, and I look forward to whatever James Gunn will do with the character. But that being said, that's enough about me and my bad takes, or what I think are the bad takes on Superman. But what about you? What was your what do you think is like the worst way to go with Superman?
The biggest worst way to go is still Injustice. Originally Injustice: Gods Among Us was the first one. It came out in 2013. It was made by NetherRealm Studios, who, for people who don't know, is the creators of, or the developers mostly, of Mortal Kombat. And they made a DC fighting game. But they decided, hey, what if we made a fucked up world where Superman accidentally kills Lois and his unborn kid, and then kills the Joker in retaliation, and then just becomes evil. But that's the plot of the game. The game just is just like he became evil. The end. And then, but a lot of people forget that that storyline ends with normal Superman beating up that Superman. Because that Superman's like, no, this would have never happened. Like the fact that you reacted like this is insane to even him, because he's just like, oh, you absolutely would react like this. He's like, no, I wouldn't. Like you're like, this is just a dark world where this happened, and that's the reason it's a bad take to me, because there are so many people on this planet now who are just like, if Superman lost Lois, he would lose his mind. Like everybody thinks the Killing Joke thing, where Joker's like, it just takes one bad day, and it causes the person to go crazy. The problem I always had with that is that the point of that book is that that's not true, and the point of Superman is that's definitely not true for Superman. There's so many stories of that exact thing happening to him multiple times. Like the worst thing he did outside of what a Justice universe does is he went into seclusion. Like he's just like, I lost Lois, I've lost everything. I'm just gonna hang out somewhere, like just in the background. I'm no longer gonna be Superman for a bit.
The Kingdom Come.
Yeah, Kingdom Come's a great example of that. Like Joker literally kills that Lois, and he's still just like, and when God kills him, he tries to get God put in jail for killing Joker. He doesn't pat him on the back going, good job for killing the Joker. He's like, that was wrong. What you did was fucked up. And that's exactly why I think Injustice is a bad depiction, because there's so many versions of Superman that are just like, if you killed everyone I love, the worst thing I'll do to you is I'll make sure you never see the light of day again. Like you will be in jail for the rest of your life, kind of thing, or the Phantom Zone, like at worst. And honestly, which is sometimes worse than death, depending on what you think. But yeah, everybody's just like, yeah, he would turn evil. It's like, no, he wouldn't. There's so many things. There's another one that I think of was the Superman Beyond thing they did for an annual, where it's like, yeah, Lois died of old age. He's now by himself, and he was just depressed. He's like, I don't know what to do. Like, but he never turned and went crazy. Like, and that's the thing. Superman is the character who would never really do that. And the point of that storyline was like, but what if he did? But people took it as in, oh, he'll always do that. Like, it's like, no, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it sucks that Injustice was as popular as I guess just being the video game. But like, I know so many people that picked up the comics and read the comics, and I never read them because I thought the designs looked hideous. Like the video game designs of all the DC characters just looked ugly as hell. So I didn't want to read a comic where I had to look at that. But everything I heard about, like in the story, like I would hear like some good stuff, but then I would hear about like how Superman's depicted. And I was like, nah, I don't think I want to read that.
Yeah, and one of the reasons the comic works is because Tom Taylor understands these characters. Because he was given this impossible task of like, hey, we want you to write a story where Superman goes crazy, and he's like, I don't want to do that, but I have to, because that's the assignment. And the reason it works for what he does, because the game just goes, he went evil, the end. Whereas the thing I'll always give Tom Taylor credit for is that Tom Taylor made it to where it's a slow burn. Like after he kills Joker, he still feels kind of bad about it, but then it slowly is like people keep fucking with him to the point where he just finally goes, you know what? You all suck. I'm just gonna take over the world. Fuck this place. And I was like, okay, fair. But the other reason to not read it is that it's just gore of like fan favorite characters through the goddamn thing. I stopped when Kyle Rayner dies in it. I was like, no, I'm good. This was too fucked up. I'm good. And that was still like year one. Like they made 5 years worth of the first Injustice one, and then they made an Injustice 2 prequel that takes place between 1 and 2. And then the other issue I have is that when you buy Injustice 2, there's no way to have a Superman with good dialogue. All the Supermans whenever you use Superman, he's the crazy evil regime Superman. So he's just a crazy person. So even if you want to be a Superman fan in that game, you can't, because he's a crazy person. It frustrates me immensely, because they try to do a good job at making you try to feel sympathetic about him, but it doesn't, because at the end of the day, he's still an evil psychopath. And honestly, he of all the characters that get completely character assassinated, Wonder Woman does, but you'd have to ask a Wonder Woman fan more about that, because I feel for you all.
It's just more evidence of why we need a good Superman video game at some point.
Exactly, because whatever the most famous piece of media is, it takes over the what is the word I'm looking for? The world consciousness, I think, is the word I'm
Yeah,
looking for.
or just kind of like the pop cultural like idea
Yes, the
of a
pop culture
character.
idea of what that character is. That's why everybody loves the Arkham games. They're like, Batman's the best. He can do everything by himself. And then because those games are so popular, it's like his Batmobile is amazing. It's like a tank. It does all these things, even though most of the Batmobiles aren't like that. And then same with Batman the Animated Series. Everybody knows those characters. Like nobody gave a shit about Mr. Freeze until
Oh
that
yeah, until Heart of
cartoon
Ice.
happened.
Yeah.
And then when no one really gave a shit about half of these characters that exist until some of these things happen. Like my Adventures of Superman sparked a whole new interest in Superman among people that I know that didn't care about him. And so I'm hoping that with James Gunn stuff and the fact that James Gunn said that he wants to have games that are tied into this universe, that maybe we'll get something that depicts these characters in the light that they should be, instead of like, what if Green Arrow was beaten to death? I'm like, I don't want to deal with that. It's like, what if Wonder Woman Steve Trevor was a Nazi? I'm like, again, Injustice, you're a psychopathic story. Like, it's just weird shit like that happens throughout all Injustice, and for some reason that was the popular thing. But I hope we're past it finally. But who knows? I know there's talks about maybe making another Injustice, but with Kevin Conroy gone, I hope that shuts the lid on it. Maybe they just make a normal fighting game. I don't know.
Yeah, we could do like a DC fighting game where like the characters aren't all assholes. I guess that's
Yeah.
also an option.
The only other time they tried that was a Super Nintendo game.
Oh, what was the name of it? I don't remember that at all.
It's Justice League. I don't remember the name of it either. Yeah, I've played it too. It's actually not very good. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Task Force, Justice League Task Force.
Justice League Task Force.
And this came out in the night. This came out around the time Superman had long hair. So, and it has Mike Grell's Green Arrow suit.
Hell yeah. I like that little snapshot of the early 90s.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But speaking of James Gunn, I'm hoping that sometime in December we get together and talk about just everything we know about Superman 2025 so far, and kind of our hopes and expectations, and just kind of like nerd out about what we're excited for in that movie coming next year. And also in December we can finally talk about Superman and Lois when it's all said and done and the finale is out. So people should subscribe and follow the show if you're interested in hearing our thoughts on that stuff coming up in December. And I don't really have much else to say other than thank you to my friends Robbie and Joel who stopped by in the live audience and checked out the stream. And anyone who is watching or listening later, thank you so much. And please let us know. Leave a comment and or reply to my post on socials. Follow us at the Supermaniacs and let us know what you think about some of these questions. What do you think is like the worst take of Superman, or how do you feel about Superman and Batman as friends and enemies, or your favorite depiction, all that stuff. We want to hear your opinions as well.
Absolutely, guys. And you can find me on Rage Select. I do stuff on there every week. I've also made a Blue Sky. I think I've had it for a while, but I literally forgot I had it. You can find me at MX Riojas at the BS, all the Blue Sky stuff, because I know that stuff is the same for everybody else.
Yeah.
But it should just be MX Riojas. You'll find me there pretty quickly.
Yeah, and people can find me at TX Trek anywhere, and also find me on Friday nights talking about Star Trek Lower Decks on my Star Trek podcast, Text Trek. But I'm also on Blue Sky, and I need to set up a Supermaniacs account on Blue Sky. But I'm liking Blue Sky. I'm seeing like a lot of people abandon Twitter and go to Blue Sky, and I think I'm about ready to pull the plug on my Twitter usage because I'm tired of getting a notification on my phone every time Elon Musk wants to feed me propaganda. It's getting annoying. So, but yeah, Blue Sky it looks nice. I'm pretty happy with the Butterfly app.
No, I'm very happy with it. I messed with it very early on, but I eventually forgot about it because not a lot of people were on it, and so
Right.
but now everybody's starting to use it up again. I'm like, okay, now I'll start using it again.
I had like 30 followers 2 weeks ago, and now I have like 300 and something. So it's like
Oh, wow.
it was like a big shift all of a sudden, and I wasn't even like posting much on there. It was just like people were, I think, wanting to abandon Twitter. So, but wherever you keep up with us, you can follow the show at the Supermaniacs, and come back in December for some Superman and Lois talk and some Superman 2025 talk. And just to remind people, there are some exciting Superman comics coming out soon. Next week, we're getting a lot of Dan Mora Superman. We're getting Superman number 20, written by Joshua Williamson, and also Justice League Unlimited number 1, written by Mark Waid. But Dan Mora drawing both of those. I'm going to check out that Justice League Unlimited number 1. And Mark Waid, one of my favorite Justice League writers. He wrote Justice League back like 25 years ago, like right after
wow.
Grant Morrison. He was on
Oh,
JLA,
yeah, that's right.
right?
Didn't he? Wasn't he the one who made Ghost Babel or not Ghost Babel? Babel, Tower of Babel.
Tower
Was
of
that him?
yeah, that was the Mark Waid's story in JLA. Yeah,
That's right. Yeah. If you guys have not read that, please read that as well. It's very good.
that's gonna be it for now. And until next time, we don't have like a good catchphrase. I'm still running with
No.
until next time, keep it super. So I know that's corny as all hell, but if you don't like it, suggest something better. Until next time, keep it super, y'all.